Support for Veterans Corner Radio is made possible by M&M Printing and the Observer News of Ruskin, Florida.
Hello and welcome to Veterans Corner Radio Podcasts, information for and about veterans. For this podcast, host Joe Mulberger talks with Dave Huffman, Executive Director of Mission POW MIA. Today, we're introduced to a nonprofit organization called Mission POW MIA. Dave Huffman, along with his wife, began the organization in 2024. Learn how Dave's interview for a high school class assignment turned into a conversation recollecting memories about American veterans of the Vietnam War. That has developed into an exchange of artifacts today, which helps to provide closure to families and in some cases to international interests. Here now is Joe Mulberger with Veterans Corner Radio on Veterans Corner Radio Podcasts.
Welcome to Veterans Corner Radio, a show dedicated to providing information to all those who have served our country's military and to their families. Now, here is your host, combat veteran and educator, retired United States Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Joe Mulberger.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's show. I'm your host for Veterans Corner Radio, Joe Mulberger. Today we have a special organization to present. It's called Mission POW MIA. And the founder and CEO is none other than Dave Huffman. Dave, did I get that title correct?
I'm one of the founding members, yes, sir, and I'm the executive director.
All right, executive director. And yours is a nonprofit organization, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. Now, we've got to build up within the simplest terms for folks an idea of what your organization does. But before we do that, people can learn more about your organization by going to missionpowmia.org, correct?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
And we're going to mention that a couple of times throughout the show so that we don't lose focus on how folks, as they listen to what you have to say, get more and more eager to learn more. You were a youngster in middle school, and what was it that captured your attention to what has developed into what you have going on today?
Well, during my junior year in high school in 1984, I decided to write a paper for government class on prisoners of war and missing in action. And back then, you had to use a newspaper and a phone book and maps and those kind of things. You couldn't just Google. And I located an article in a newspaper about the mother of a missing Marine Corps aviator that lived near my hometown. She lived in the next town over. And I called her up cold and asked her if I could come interview her, and she said yes. And so I drove out to her house and interviewed her and her husband about her son, Captain John Consalvo Jr., who was lost on 7 May 1972. He was the pilot of an F-4 and went down north of Da Nang. And so I remained friends with her my entire life. She gave me a POW MIA bracelet. Those are the stainless steel bracelets that came around in the 70s that bear the name of a service member that's still missing in action. And I've worn that ever since. And then forward to 2014, I met my wife, Jeannie Jacobs Huffman. And when I met her, I did not know her father was missing in action. And she did not know of my connection with this. So took her to the wall for the first time in 2014, saw her dad's name on the wall. And then we began investigating what happened to her father. He was a naval aviator. He was lost on 25 August 1967. She was 5 months old when his plane went down in North Vietnam near a little island called Huffman. That was also the focal point of the Gulf of Tonkin incident that actually started the Vietnam War. And so that's how we came to be into the investigative side of what happened. And since that time, we formed Mission POW MIA.
So how long has Mission POW MIA been in existence?
34 months. We formed in February of 2023. We were part of another organization, and we decided that we needed to go a different direction, a more positive direction. And so when that organization shut its doors, we formed a mission very quickly, within 3 weeks of that group closing down. And it was formed with family members of unaccounted for service members from different branches of the military in the all Vietnam War at the time, and also retired Navy admiral. Since that time, we picked up members from World War II. We picked up members from the Cold War. Veterans can join our organization. Concerned citizens can join our organizations. We have kids that are members of our organization, and we also have organizational sponsors. So on the local level, state level, national level, we've worked with a variety of veteran service organizations and local chapters that have joined to support our cause.
Wow. Tell us how you get involved with the Defense POW MIA Accountability Agency.
So the DPAA is the government agency that's tasked with locating, repatriating, and identifying service members that are missing from the 5 conflicts of World War II, Cold War, Korean War, Vietnam War, and the Persian Gulf conflicts. In total, there's a little over 80,000 that are still missing from those conflicts, majority of World War II. In Vietnam right now, there's 1,566 that are still missing, including the loved ones of our board of directors and the bulk of our family membership. So we started attending what they call family member updates or annual government briefings, where the families all get together and the Defense POW MIA Accounting Agency presents, what they've done for the year, what their plans are. And it's also an opportunity for families to sit with their case analyst and look at cases. Our first real mission was to start sitting in with different families as an advocate for them and to ask questions on their behalf sometimes that maybe they weren't thinking of asking. So we serve as a family advocate. We also have a memorandum of understanding with the Defense POW MIA Accounting Agency where we can help them with various things. And one of the topics one of the items that was recently completed at the beginning of 2025, my wife Jeannie created the National POW MIA Recognition Day poster for the Department of then Defense, now War. And it's the first time a Gold Star daughter has ever done that. So she created a poster that recognized all of the conflicts that the DPA is tasked with searching for the missing. The poster's comprised of 5 different individuals. They were at the time a U.S. Marine and 4 ROTC cadets from Old Dominion University, and they're wearing period uniforms from each of the conflicts. We do a lot of displays and talks, and I have a large collection of uniforms and gear from World War I through modern times that we take around with us when we do our talks. And so this poster depicts, the missing in action with what they would have been wearing when they were lost or when they were taken as prisoner of war. And that's just one of the examples of a project we worked with them.
So let's get to the nitty grits of what your organization actually does, like what its foundational charter is. It's an exchange of resources of sorts, which actually is the common resources of something that some member of one military or another would have been carrying on them, and it's left behind, and it becomes maybe a resource that's been left for a while and some person in that nation has found, or maybe even war trophies that somebody took off the battle space with them, and you sort of repatriate those resources back to their country of origin. Is that correct?
Yes, that's part of what we do. Our core mission is defined by the acronym SEARCH, and SEARCH stands for Seeking the Fullest Possible Accounting of the Missing, engaging in partner organizations like your radio network would be an example of that, advocating for the families, which is what I just talked about, sitting in on the case reviews, researching and investigating, which comes into play about locating these types of different artifacts that are in Vietnam, for example. The C is for conducting outreach and education, and the H is for honoring the service and sacrifice of our missing and their loved ones. So, under the research and under the advocating is really where we developed the program we call Operation HEART. And HEART stands for the Honorable Exchange of Artifacts for Resolutions in Time. So, we went to Vietnam in 2024, and we went through 5 different museums when we were in Vietnam. We had comprised a list of items we were looking for from the records in the National Archives. And we found over 3 dozen items related to American MIAs, former POWs, to include ID cards, blood chits, which is what a pilot carried with a little red number on the bottom that associated him to that number, dog tags, different weapons with their serial numbers, helmets with logos, squadron markings on them, those kind of items. And we came back after that trip and we developed this HEART program. And we've been going around and we've been talking to different veteran groups and we've been asking for the veterans that may have something that they've held on to for decades that their family doesn't want. If something happens to them, it's going to end up, in the trash or Goodwill or in a yard sale. And we can take those items and we can use those in exchanging with the Vietnamese, in this case, for items that they have on display of active Americans that are missing in action.
Tell us about this wallet that you had and you brought back to Vietnam and the response that you got from the Vietnamese.
So before we left, I had been having lunch with a veteran, a friend of mine, and he had been telling me stories about going when he was in Vietnam. And I asked him, "Do you have anything?" And he said, "Yeah, I do." And I said, "Well, are you ready to part with it?" And he said, "No, I'm not." And so we had a couple of more lunches, and then he called me up and he said, "When are you guys leaving for Vietnam?" And I said, "Next week." He said, "I want to have lunch with you and I want to meet your wife. I've never met her." And I said, "Okay." So we went to lunch and we sat down. He reached in his pocket and he pulled this wallet out and he said, "Get something good for it." And he handed it to me, and it was a wallet that had belonged to a Viet Cong soldier. And inside the wallet were letters that the Vietnamese soldier had received from his family. The receipt for his AK-47 that was issued to him was inside of the wallet, and a little photograph of somebody we probably think was his mother that was in the wallet as well. So I took it to Vietnam, and as we traveled the country, I showed it to people. Everybody wanted that wallet. It was important for them. And it was just as important for us to get back these artifacts of Americans that were on displays in their museum. So before we left Vietnam, I left it with the Defense POW MIA detachment there in Hanoi. And I said, the veteran said, get something good for it. He has other stuff that he's willing to give me as long as we get a positive response back from the Vietnamese. And we were informed late last year that they had exchanged the wallet during what they call the annual tech talks, where they determine how they're going to operate in the country of Vietnam. The U.S. team is going to operate in Vietnam to look for MIAs. And they had received back the dog tag of a missing Air Force pilot. So in February of this year, that 75-year-old son received a box, and inside the box was his dad's dog tag. His remains are still not recovered, but he has something that was with his father the day he was shot down. And he had it on a chain, and I had a Zoom call with him, and, he held it up and showed me. And he was very thankful that this had come to fruition. And since that time, we've had a lot of veterans send us artifacts. We look for diaries, letters, photographs, equipment that may have a name scrawled on it, handmade knives that were usually like family heirlooms, things of that nature. Those are the items that we're seeking from U.S. veterans that battle flags too, that are important to the Vietnamese families.
It's quite incredible. Now, that's sort of the germination of things, how things got started. Tell us about how you and your organization facilitated Secretary of War Pete Hegseth to present artifacts back to Vietnam during his visit there.
Sure. So, as I mentioned earlier, my wife designed the poster for National POW MIA Recognition Day. And this year we were guests at the Pentagon on September the 19th. And prior to the ceremony, we had a meeting with Secretary Hegseth in his outer office. And the topic, came up about what we do and why we do it. And my wife presented him with her dad's POWMI bracelet, which he put on his wrist and wore during his speech and held it up. Very powerful. My son, that's a second lieutenant in the Army, was there with us. He's one of the folks that's on the poster. He portrayed a Vietnam helicopter crewman on the poster. So the secretary was very gracious to us. And I mentioned to him, I said, "Hey, if you ever go to Vietnam, let us know. We would like to provide you with artifacts if you want to do an artifact exchange." And he immediately said, "Absolutely. And let's do it." And we heard from the secretary's office shortly after that. And we provided him with a knife, an ammo pouch, a belt, and what's the equivalent of a Vietnamese unit ID tag that had been captured by a U.S. Marine in May of 1968. And he took that with him to Vietnam, and he exchanged that and received some items back that are now in the hands of the Defense POW MIA Accounting Agency, that they have to verify that they're good and where they should go at that point. But that was the exchange that happened earlier in November of this year in Hanoi.
That's quite something. Yeah, so a lot of activity between the U.S. and Vietnam. Are there other countries and other periods of war that you've been a part of?
The main one, besides Vietnam, that we are working with is the Cold War. There's 126 guys missing from the Cold War. They were mostly airplane crews of 10 to 12 people that were lost around the between the Soviet Union, former Soviet Union, and Korea. A lot of them in the 1950s. And there's an issue with the Korean War Memorial. Not everybody's name is on the war memorial that probably should be on the memorial. And these Cold War fellows, this one case in particular, they were shot down the day after the armistice was signed. And so they don't fit anywhere. And they were on a mission to do reconnaissance to ensure that the armistice was being upheld. But because they were shot down after the armistice, their names aren't inscribed on the war memorial. And so there's different issues that affect different MIA families. Some families, want closure through remains. Some families want recognition for their loved one. And that's another way that we help out. We also have over 100 posters, and you can see many of them on our website, that Jeannie's created relative to Vietnam, to the service members that are missing from the Cold War conflict, all the missing Green Berets, broken down by the countries that they were lost in: Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, missing West Pointers, missing Annapolis, and we're currently working on the missing from the U.S. Air Force Academy.
Now, before we go any further, let's reiterate something for our audience. If you want to know more about this amazing organization called Mission POW MIA, go online to exactly that mission, POWMIA.org, to learn more. And you can actually sign up and be a member of this organization as well. Dave, what you're telling us is absolutely phenomenal. You're a nonprofit. How do you obtain funding?
So for the last 34 months, we've obtained funding through donations, whether that's our memberships donations. You can join for $30 a year to be a member. We have a lifetime membership option as well. Organizational sponsors like other VSO, Veteran Service Organization chapters of the Vietnam Veterans of America, the Veterans of Foreign Wars. The local posts can join us and be an organizational sponsor. We have had support from the Vietnam Veterans of America National. They've made a couple of donations to us that have helped fund us. But we don't have overhead. We don't have a building. We none of us draw a salary. So our costs are pretty low, and we've been able to partner with organizations that have like-minded strategies and like-minded goals. So when we're able to do that, it reduces costs even further. Most recently, we were awarded a grant or a contract with the Department of War for a little over $500,000. And that is to assist the Vietnamese in locating war dead, to also continue the artifact exchange programs, and it helps facilitate trips for our MIA families to Vietnam and to bring some Vietnamese veterans and families here to the U.S. as part of this program. The Vietnam and the United States have a comprehensive strategic partnership, which is like the best partnership you can have between allies. And this is foundational to the MIA issue for our families. So we feel that by helping the Vietnamese, we can get further cooperation to continue the mission to locate American MIAs from the war.
Absolutely. So no overhead, but there's a travel expense.
Yes, yes. So travel expenses, and that's what the funding really goes for. We live in Southeast Virginia. We have to go to Washington D.C. quite a bit. So we are. It's about well, depending on the traffic, it could be anywhere from 4 hour to 8 hour drive there and back. So it does. It helps us with gas. It helps us with a hotel. It helps us with food. Those kind of things when we're on these trips. We were just in D.C. last week, meeting with the Vietnamese embassy personnel and the defense attaché from Vietnam. We have to go back in another week for a follow-up meeting with them as we start to prepare for trips to Vietnam next summer. Between our MI families and our, we will be taking a group of U.S. veterans over there as well to do people-to-people exchanges, more investigations, some site visits of American losses and MIAs, and just continue the relationship we've been developing very rapidly within the last less than 3 years with Vietnam.
How do you manage like with translators and getting your word across?
So right now, one of our senior advisors or actually two of our advisors, one of our advisors was South Vietnamese who left the country at the end of the war, came here. He lives down in Georgia, and he rose to a very prominent position in the Coca-Cola company. And now he does volunteer work for us. And so he's obviously a fluent native speaker. And then we just brought on board another senior advisor who was formerly with another government agency who now is on board with us to advise us on Southeast Asia. And he is also a fluent speaker in Vietnamese. And with this funding that we received from the War Department has enabled us to have some people on the ground in Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City, which was formerly Saigon. So we have some mission representatives in country now as well.
You actually facilitate a lot of closure as we look at, begging a question of, so what is it what's the value of your organization for like the community of veterans, certainly in the U.S., but now we're learning more than just U.S. veterans of their respective countries where we were engaged. And it sounds like you're providing closure to people that otherwise would not have it.
Well, we know out of the large number of MIAs from all the previous conflicts, there's just some that are just gone. I mean, by the nature of their loss, an explosion, something like that, there's not going to be remain. But if we can find an item and can help get that back to the family, or we can give the family an answer that this is what happened, through the work that we're doing or information that we're obtaining and passing along to the DPA that they can give the family the answer. That's a big part of it for the families. Now, for the veterans, a lot of veterans, as you know, and you've probably interviewed folks, carry survivor guilt. They came home, their buddies didn't. And this gives a veteran, that has that item in the closet that doesn't know what to do with it. He mails it to us. We facilitate it in an exchange to get back something that helps an American. That helps him with closure as well. And when we were in Vietnam, we went and visited a Vietnamese military cemetery. And I was explaining the unknown soldier to them. And I asked them, did they have unknown soldiers? And they pointed out the grave and what the marking looked like. And it turned out in that cemetery alone, they had over 100 unknowns interned in that cemetery. So we walked through the entire cemetery, placed incense on the grave of each of the Vietnamese soldiers. In turn, a Vietnamese general came over to the U.S. In October, one of the ones we had met when we were in Vietnam. We took him to the Vietnam Wall. We walked him up and down the wall. We held up pictures of American MIAs and told their stories as we walked the wall. He saluted every one of them. And he was at the Battle of Hamburger Hill. And we went to the battle of where the names of, I think it was 55 soldiers were killed in the Battle of Hamburger Hill. And we went to that spot on the wall. We read all the names, and he stood there and held a salute while we read them all. So it's closure as well for our former enemy. So if we can help each other to get answers for an American family and a Vietnamese family, we feel that that's a win. The folks doing this are the children of those that are missing, and they were victims of the war as much as anybody else. And this gives them some sense of involvement into getting that closure by allowing them to participate in these activities and work to get answers. If they can't get them for themselves, they're going to get them for another family.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, on Veterans Corner Radio, we say that our veterans, family members of veterans, and fans of veterans are worth their value in gold. Today, we've been speaking with Dave Huffman of Mission POW MIA. To learn more, go online to missionpowmia.org, and you're going to find a whole bunch of information. Dave, thank you so much for what you're doing, and thank you for your time today. And we really look forward to sharing your interview with our audience.
Thank you very much. It's been great to be here. And we just want to close with, remember, never leave a fallen comrade behind.
You've been listening to Veterans Corner Radio with your host, retired United States Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Joe Mulberger. The views expressed on this program are those of Joe and his guests, and our opinions based on the best available information. In matters of law or governmental regulation, it will always be best to check with the appropriate agency. Thanks for listening, and we hope you'll join us for the next program on Veterans Corner Radio.
Here's a quick final thought. If you're enjoying these podcasts, why not take a minute to subscribe or mark Veterans Corner Radio as a favorite? It's easy, and you'll be set to be among the first to find out when new podcasts are published. And thanks again for listening to Veterans Corner Radio.